So now let's look at the progress scoring scale. As you can see here, we're assessing progress also on a scale from 0 to 4. 0 again means not in place or it's not started, but also it could mean in this case that it's absent or stopped. As you can see from the rest of the scale, we're looking for progress here. So a 1 would mean that the efforts are declining, 2 improving, 3 that there's been performance, and 4 that there have been some gains. And this is another mechanism for us to look at the sense of intentionality by looking at the progress over time. As you can imagine, looking at this from perhaps 1 year to the next, that an organization could have achieved 2 of those 4 requirements in question 1, and they could do that in year 1. If in year 2 they still have those 2 requirements, then although it shows that there is some work being done, there's very little progress. And as we know now, intentionality is critical to social inclusion and removing the barriers of social inclusion effectively. So by looking at progress, we're threading in another perspective on keeping the topic of social inclusion on the table. So now let's look at the question framework so you can understand how we're structuring the questions. So as you can see from this slide, there are 2 questions here. Both of these questions reflect the indicators of openness. You can see in question 1, there are a series of superscript numbers in red. So I'll read the question and you can follow along. Number 1, the organization, in consultation with the community, has assessed the demographic profile of the community, and it understands the needs of the community and cultural groups, and understands gaps in programs, services, or resources or collections for these community and cultural groups. So in this part, you would rate as a group the level of status on removing these barriers to inclusion by achieving these 4 pieces. You would also do that for progress. And as you can see at the bottom, you summarize the status score for both questions as well as for progress. That allows you to see your status and your progress per question, per indicator, and then you can summarize both to see and have a general sense of how well your organization is doing per indicator. As you can see from this slide, this one will demonstrate your level of openness, intentionality, and inclusion per year. So you can look at this score in comparison from year to year or perhaps with peer groups. The final slide allows you to see the status and progress scores in combination. And so we've provided a framework structure here for you to look at your final scores and the recommendations. So from 0 to 26, the recommendations is be open to change. And there's some feedback within the toolkit that will help an organization move from this level to the next level and so on. The second group, second recommendation category would be 27 to 48, and the recommendation is become intentional. The third is to refine, and the fourth is to mentor others. As I mentioned before, the social inclusion audit also has a toolkit. This is a wonderful toolkit that's divided by question. So each of the questions, as you can see on this slide here, has information, tools, and exercises to help you work on and advance your level of inclusion. So it includes things like, why is this important? How-to information, examples of this work from organizations across Canada and abroad, and it also provides an interpretation and recommendations of the scores per question. So after you finish the audit tool, you can go back to the toolkit and have a greater understanding of the interpretation of your scores per question and per indicator. Plus, the toolkit also has the literature review, research, and you can find all of this online at siatoolkit.com. That concludes part 2. Stay tuned to part 3 where we'll get into more detail the indicator of openness.